All right. I see Fish and Golf with First Blood. And I've got Cameron with us this morning. Good morning, everybody. Cameron, how you feeling, brother?
Well, it almost doesn't feel real.
Right? like
It
today,
literally,
right now, currently, Donald John Trump is the president of the United States of America.
yes,
Not the president-elect, not the winner of the election,
not
the
former
soon-to-be.
President Trump.
He is the president of the United States of America. We're back, bitches.
Yeah, today is the first full day of America's golden age. And I don't think that's much of an exaggeration. And I've said before, I said back when the election happened, like, hey, look, now is not the time to take your foot off the gas. Like, don't make that mistake. Like, we won this round, not the war. And the truly hard work has yet to come. But given the fact that Trump signed like dozens of executive orders and did it at his party in front of everybody and was making jokes and like getting excited about signing some of them, and he's such a showman too. Like, oh, Mr. President, here's one that pulls us out of the Who. Ooh, okay. Like he didn't know that was coming. You know, like.
We might do a whole nother show on the executive orders. But there's a lot of other stuff related to the inauguration itself that's worth talking about. And I really want to get down on the pardons today before
totally
before those get cold, because that's some important news.
Yeah, you see what I'm going with for my name today.
Yeah.
See, like
on.
Yeah, well, hey man, like got to sneak in the dad jokes.
I was pretty happy with this particular pun. A new day dawns. Kill it.
Yes, kill it indeed. So, okay. So there's two pieces to this. And I've said before that I actually think the tradition of the king's pardon is important, is something that doesn't need to go away, even if people abuse the privilege, and it is a privilege. But the ability to forgive, be forgiven, come back from mistakes, and it's so integral in our society. And don't misunderstand. I don't think that everybody should just automatically get forgiven for everything that they do, socially speaking. Like, if you are an unrepentant murderer, well, you don't get a pardon for some pretty obvious reasons. But the tradition of the pardon and why it's important legally and socially, I'm going to be on board with it, even though part of what we're going to talk about here is how Joe Biden abused it so very much. We might actually have a constitutional question about how far the powers of the president's pardons go. So,
well, and you know, I've actually got this. We've got a legal scholar discussing the idea of preemptive pardons and how they're completely illegitimate.
That, leaving that example of President Ford and President Nixon to the side, how unusual is it for a president to use this pardon of power of pardons, I should say, as a kind of a get out of jail free card for crimes that have not yet been prosecuted or frankly even alleged? Because I'm not entirely sure what crimes his lawyer or his children could have even committed. So it seems a little bit unusual to me for him to be handing pardons out.
That is very true. And what will happen is that there will be a bit of a tell by these pardons that there have been some criminal acts committed. Because what we do know since the very early days of the presidential...
You can't see it because Cameron's camera is in the way, but this is Stacey Hawkins, a Rutgers Law School professor, weighing in as a constitutional expert on the idea of preemptive pardons.
Pardon is that they can only be exercised for actual crimes. So wrongdoing has to have occurred, even if it has not been charged and someone has not been convicted of a crime. The crime has to have been committed. And so if he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
That's interesting. My bad.
Oh.
She's not talking about Biden. This is from over 4 years ago, and they're talking about Trump's preemptive pardons of his family. But wait a minute. Let me take you back a little bit and remember what was going on back then. Donald Trump did not issue preemptive pardons of his family. In fact, he didn't issue any preemptive pardons. In fact, while there were some pardons that Trump issued that some of us took issue with and thought, it's a bit of a stretch there, Don, he did, in fact, only pardon people who had actually committed crimes and either at least been alleged and were being tried or indicted or had actually been convicted. He issued some pardons that were obviously political, that every president does that, and no decent person likes it. But he did not issue any pardons where, like the Hunter Biden pardon, for example, where Joe Biden issued a pardon for Hunter that was so expansive that not only did it cover everything he may or may not have done for over a decade, but the pardon actually covered a period of time of several hours. It was about 6 hours after the pardon was issued, in which, in theory, if the legal theory that such a thing as a preemptive pardon can be a blanket preemptive pardon for anything and everything that you may have or not done, can be issued in that way. Hunter Biden had 6 hours in which he could have committed genocide on national television and enjoyed complete and total immunity, right? But this bitch goes on. Go ahead, Cameron. I can tell you're dying to say something. No, there's the rest of this that I want to get to.
No, it's just I just wanted to make snarky comments about how Joe Biden basically said, not that he did anything wrong, but I'm totally just issuing a blanket pardon for the entire time he worked for Burisma. And it's like, I just couldn't help but think of that Bart Simpson meme that's like, what an odd thing to say. Like, and speaking of memes, I sent you something that
I'm working on it.
That you will find humorous that relates to this. Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear that Fauci came out and was like, oh, hey, whoa, I don't know why I'm getting a pardon. I didn't do anything wrong. What? Who, me?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll say this, at least
if Fauci wants to truly be safe from prosecution, he needs a pardon for AIDS.
Yeah, and puppy murder. Yeah, like it's look,
torture. Puppy.
Yeah.
Torture.
Yeah. So, but it's funny. It's like, at least Fauci had enough sense to come out and do the golly gee shucks who me routine. Like, how many? Like, Millie didn't.
Nope.
And his family did. Look, before we go into the discussion, do you want to play the rest of the clip first so we can have the table fully set?
Because the rest of the clip is gonna be part of what the discussion is.
Is a pardon a blanket get out of jail free card, or does it have to specifically refer to one particular crime or crimes?
Yeah, so it does go to particular crimes, although, multiple crimes can be pardoned. And again, it has to be something that has actually been committed. It does not have to be charged or convicted, but it has to be specific in terms of there has to be an actual crime that is committed.
Oh,
And so,
that's
like I said,
interesting. It
it
has to
will
be
be a tell
specific.
if the president pardons these individuals insofar as what is criminal wrongdoing that we may not have been aware of, but we will become, aware of should these pardons issue. The other thing that's really is that it's only applicable to federal offenses. And so, for instance, the Trump family and the Trump organization is subject to criminal investigation in the state of New York. Those would not be subject to the presidential pardon.
I had one really quick question for you here, Professor. I'm wondering if you see this as potentially resulting in some sort of constitutional amendment. If Congress sees, if he does go through with some of these pardons, and Congress and the judicial branch see how it's being used and say, we need to make sure this never happens again.
I'm not optimistic on that front. Again, we did contemplate this, at least the founders did contemplate the abuse of the presidential pardon power during the original Constitutional Convention. And it was believed that it should be left to the exercise of executive discretion, and that otherwise the remedy of impeachment was sufficient to check the abuse of the pardon power. So I'm not sure that those considerations have changed. I'm not sure that just because Trump has challenged a lot of our constitutional norms. He has engaged in unprecedented behavior that we have not really had to contemplate in the past. But I don't think.
Okay, real quick. This is a bit of an aside from this conversation generally. You hear them say that often, that Donald Trump eschewed the Constitution, that he.
Yeah, I know where you're going. I had the same thought.
It was abnormal. Have you ever heard one of these motherfuckers, excuse my Scottish, but have you ever heard one of these people actually say what it is that Donald Trump did that was so bizarre within the confines of constitutional norms? And the answer is no. But
he was bad. He was Cheeto Hitler, Chris. That's all you need. I'm in my feels.
I don't think that many people are contemplating vast constitutional amendments in order to remedy what they believe to be the challenges to our constitutional order that he's provoked. So I don't expect that this one will pose a constitutional amendment, especially because it's an extraordinarily difficult process to get passed. It has to be passed first by 2/3 of Congress and then by 3/4 of the states. And so that's a really high hurdle when we can barely get, a majority of Congress to agree on anything these days.
And,
hey.
I mean, she's obviously wrong there. I mean, we just learned the other day that the president can simply announce
You're stealing my thunder.
The Eighth Amendment has been ratified and enacted.
I was going to make the same joke. Chris,
to be clear, on the Equal Rights Amendment, the deadline was 78 or 79 for them to get total ratification through the states, and they fell way short. And then they extended the deadline to I think it was 1983, at which point they had gotten some 34 states, and they needed 38 to get it ratified. They never got 38, right? Never got 38, but more importantly, they didn't get 38 by the second deadline. The idea that the 28th Amendment was ratified, you're wrong. Tim Pool still has his shot for the correct and proper 28th Amendment, which is that the chickens being necessary to the free state, the right to keep, bear, and breed chickens shall not be infringed. We're getting chickens in a couple of weeks, and I'm all for the chickens thing.
Yeah, look, the problem with chickens is the chicken shit. That's the drawback. I'm not a big fan of
kids in a garden. We're okay.
You say this, but my experience with chickens is there's a reason why HOAs hate them. Because you can't control where they shit. You cannot. But
honestly, mom and dad have ducks and chickens on their property, and it's not a problem.
Fair enough. But look, Be controversial in the chat says they're always so vague. And yes, of course they are. They have to be vague because as soon as they get specific, as soon as they say, for example, Donald Trump said there were very fine people on both sides, that's such an easy falsehood to debunk because he literally says in the next sentence, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. Like it was that easy the whole time.
He says specifically, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists.
So they have to remain vague. They have to keep you scared. They have to tell you that there was Russia collusion. They can't tell you that the Russia collusion was Russia spending money on Facebook ads, and not just for Donald Trump, but for Hillary Clinton as well. They were just trying to sow chaos in our system, and apparently it succeeded.
They spent less than $250,000 on Facebook ads, which, if you know anything about an ad campaign in a political process, like if you're selling stuff on Facebook, you want to make money, you can absolutely sell to your very targeted local area for a very reasonable price. And that's on Facebook and X and anywhere. I sold insurance through Facebook ads one year, and I did almost $1 million in annualized premium off of literally one $50 ad buy on Facebook. But when you're talking about trying to shift an election, you spent less than $250,000 on an ad platform, and that was your total ad buy? You weren't even in this game.
Yeah. You weren't even a player, buddy. You weren't even in the stands watching the game. Like,
I played basketball just like LeBron.
What?
Your driveway is not even paved under your milk crate hoop, son.
So the obvious thing here, of course, is this all goes back to the Hunter Biden laptop, which also was supposed to be, Russian disinformation. Remember, it was like 60 or 70 intelligence officials signed the letter, the very carefully worded letter that said this has 51. All. Okay, it was 51. Man, brother, we didn't plan that. You were just ready to go. That was impressive.
I planned this.
I'm saying we didn't plan it. You didn't know I was going to bring that up and give you the segue. Anyhow.
And they've all just had their clearances revoked.
Oh, which they should, but they're carefully.
Like Swalwell should have.
Their carefully worded letter about how it has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. Like, that's some really specific wording there. You're stopping just barely short of saying that it is Russian propaganda. But anyhow, that laptop, for the longest time, sort of like Ashley Biden's diary, first of all, it wasn't real. And, well, okay, now maybe it's real. Well, okay, now it's definitely real, but it's not that bad.
Okay, so you said, first of all, it wasn't real. Okay, gotcha. You mean they started, their narrative started with.
That's correct. I don't mean that it wasn't real. Right. It was obviously always real, but I'm saying the narrative was.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
The narrative was as we slid down, the Overton window, so to speak. It started out with it's not real, and then, well, maybe it's real. Okay, it's real, but it's not that bad. Okay, it's real and it has some bad stuff on it, but you're a jerk for paying this much attention to it. Oh, you're a pervert. You just want to look at Hunter Biden's dick and all the other stuff. And it's like, no, actually, the main thing that most of us had a problem with the laptop, apart, of course, from the potential, child prostitution, was all the stuff about 10% to the big guy. 10% of what and whom is the big guy? That's
Tony Bobulinski and a couple of other insiders who have testified, who've written sworn affidavits, testified under oath that the big guy absolutely referred to Joe Biden in particular.
So somebody made the joke in our group chat that 10% to the big guy was obviously the smartest money they ever spent. So,
and in fairness, it got them what they were. I mean, they got what they paid for, which was preemptive pardons for everything. Now, I played that video from the so-called scholar. And this is from, and like I already pointed out, that was from 4 years ago when they were talking about the idea that Donald Trump might pardon all of his family with these bizarre, wide sweeping blanket pardons. And that was not the only example. I've got this from Libs of TikTok I'd like to share. And then I want to get into the J6 pardons by comparison.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family.
God, I want to punch him so bad.
Covering up for the president, in addition to his own family.
Hey, do me a favor.
Is there an innocent
camera.
explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
Now, right there, it says Trump discussed pardons for Giuliani, 3 eldest children, and Kushner. Did he? I mean, when?
Well, he's Donald Trump. He says things. He's stream of consciousness. I have no doubt that he probably mentioned it, and the news media, being the piece of fucks they are, took it out of context and ran with it.
I'll give you, he probably banged Stormy, but this definitely smells more like the suckers and losers things, where it's like, oh, we've got an anonymous source that says Donald Trump said something damning, and then but here we go. They went on and postured about this for days and days.
The answer to that is going to be no. If you haven't done anything wrong, you sit there and go, what do you need a preemptive pardon for?
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
I imagine if you decide to issue.
Now, in fairness, I'll push back again. I mean, that's the same chick from the clip, the one that we watched earlier and talked about. I would push back, especially if I were the attorney arguing against her, and say, how is your claim there different from attempting to impeach someone's Fifth Amendment right by saying that your unwillingness to testify means that you must be guilty, that your assertion of your right to not to incriminate, not to self-incriminate, is the same as incriminating yourself. Okay, so that respect belongs there.
There might be some fun discussion to be had there, but I'm gonna let that go just to keep moving forward.
We'll come back to that, maybe even in a later show.
Issue
yes,
preemptive pardons. It will be cast in a way that he is protecting his family and protecting their reputations from, villainous exterior forces that are against him.
First,
what do you know? Does that sound familiar?
off, we should just take a deep breath and acknowledge the audacity of a president who's so clearly concerned about his own criminal culpability and that of his family members that pardons are a major obsession with him.
The idea of a kind of prospective pardon, this sort of permanent federal get-out-of-jail-free card. That seems to be what we're talking about in the case of this, right, with Giuliani and his 3 eldest children who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of a crime. Maybe they've committed a lot, and they don't want to face action. I don't know. It's weird. I wouldn't ask for a pardon. I don't think I deserve one because I don't think I've done anything criminal. But, where does that come from, that concept that you can just kind of wave your magic pardon?
God, the projection is just stunning.
Exactly.
Mimi Rocha is literally my DA in my town. There will be opportunities to prosecute these people, regardless if they.
God, this is one of those guys that I just hate.
As they are thinking.
Hopefully, Ellie, there will be a skyfall on this entire crime family, and there will be another day for them to die.
The president does indeed.
Donald Trump called for violence. Another day for them to die. Where was the outrage on that one?
Oh, the James Bond puns were bad.
Yeah.
Anyhow, do you want to go through the rest of it? I feel like you set the table pretty well.
There's only 20 seconds left of it.
Or any members of his family would you see that, and I asked Preet Bharara this question, as essentially an admission of guilt?
I certainly would view it that way. I think millions of Americans would view it that way. If there was no belief in criminality, why would he think a pardon was necessary?
CNN has learned.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead and let it play through so we could, once again get Adam Schiff, pencil.
Why? I hate him. Like, seriously, him.
Yeah, but the
him
thing is,
and
in that particular video, we got him saying it on two different shows.
Look, I know. It's just him and Vindman. I don't know which one of them I want to punch more, but every time I see that smug smirk, God, you said to me once, we were just talking, and you were like, every man has an ass whooping quotient inside of him, and once he gets his ass whooped that number of times, he becomes a man. And Vindman,
if you haven't met your ass whoopings quota, you're not a man.
And Vindman and Schiff obviously are deficient in getting their ass whooped because, God, hate them both so much.
You know what? That honestly, just an aside, you mentioning that, building stuff, having kids, raising a family, working, producing something, doing valuable stuff, getting your ass whooped a certain number of times, failing and trying again a few times. We could do a whole show on the process of becoming a man.
Okay.
And the general premise is that it's an ongoing thing.
Look, I don't want to drag us into a debate about the philosophy of law and everything, but I do think that the pardon is important. You say a lot that language matters. Well, when you're pardoning somebody, you're basically saying you screwed up. However, there are these mitigating circumstances, and we are going to give you clemency for your screw up. We are going to forgive it. When you get into the realm of this reminds me of when the Catholic Church used to sell indulgences, and that was corrupt and evil and totally went against the spirit of what the point of Christian forgiveness was. I have not yet done the thing, but go ahead and tell me to say 17 Hail Marys so I can go do the thing and everything will be good. I do think that there is legitimately a reason to at least question. Okay, it's like the meme. If the shot was safe and effective, why does Fauci need a pardon? Well, that's actually a really good question. If the shot was in fact, even if the shot has problems with it, if Fauci legitimately believed in good faith that it was safe and effective, why does Fauci need a pardon? Why did we have to tell Big Pharma, hey, push through this experimental drug? Don't worry about testing it. We're just going to give you immunity.
Right.
Well, why do they need immunity?
Yeah, why should they get immunity? We didn't. From their drug.
Yes.
That was supposed to give us immunity.
Well played, sir. Well played. Sometimes you can hit a home run off the tee, and that was it right there. But no, I do think that this is an admission of guilt, and it's so specific. He's pardoning it. Again, I go back to the Hunter Biden thing where it's like, he got pardoned preemptively for his entire stretch of time when he worked for Burisma. Boy, that's weird. I wonder why that's the period of time that got pardoned. And now
Chicky Pants made a point when she was talking about the idea of Trump pardoning his kids and his family and his associates and allies with the preemptive blanket pardon, which I'll remind you again, he didn't. In fact, the only people we ever heard as the general John Q. public talking about the idea of Trump doing preemptive pardons, the only people we ever heard talking about that were the media. I might even go so far, you hear them talk about the God Emperor playing 3D chess. 4D,
40.
9D chess. Yeah. 37D underwater basket weaving chess. Right. Given the way this turned out, it wouldn't surprise me to learn that Donald Trump did float the idea of preemptive pardons to get it in the news cycle, with the expectation that, because remember these were from 4 years ago, right? So it's after the election was over. Joe Biden is going to be sworn in on January 20th, 2021, and Trump floats this idea, and the whole Democrat media goes just fire sale on talking about how bad, how evil, how corrupt such a thing would be, knowing that no, Biden's going to have to do this.
Well, it's just so a few years later,
the rest of his family out of jail in just 4 years.
Just so a few years later, guys like you and I could reference this and be like, "Hey, you hypocritical dirtbags! Remember when you said this? Remember when you said preemptive pardons were an admission of guilt?" And because it's a pardon, because you are being pardoned for a thing, I think, semantically, philosophically, I think the difference between the Fifth Amendment and the pardon is the Fifth Amendment is predicated on the fact you are innocent until you are proven guilty. You
Correct.
only need a pardon if you're guilty. You do not need a pardon. That's fantastic. I'm gonna have to gargle the holy water. Okay. You only need a pardon if you have something to pardon. Right?
Right. But just like your example, the Fifth Amendment doesn't cover you if you're being asked, if you're being subpoenaed to answer questions about something you're not involved in. If there's no way for you to incriminate yourself, then the argument could be made that the Fifth Amendment doesn't protect you. Now, obviously, in a more esoteric sense, it doesn't matter what you're being asked about. That you're being asked about it means that you're somehow at least tangentially related, even if only as an innocent bystander witness. But that you were there means that there's a connection, and you can always make the argument that itself includes the expectation that you could say something that could be used to illegitimately indict you for your tangential relation to whatever activity. But interestingly, once you have been granted immunity for anything related to the topic of the conversation,
I was actually about to go there.
You no longer use the defense of the Fifth Amendment and self-incrimination. Like, oh no, I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I might tend to incriminate myself. Oh no, you're immune from incrimination on this subject, so
you have to answer the question. Yeah,
you'll be held in contempt.
Yeah, and contempt is a separate charge. I think I've gone back and forth on this. Investigating every single person that was ever involved in taking down Donald Trump is not practical, and is not something I want to see the administration put energy into. But I do think some of the biggest offenders do need to be investigated, and I do think that this is a constitutional question that might have to hit the Supreme Court, because honestly, I'm going to be intellectually consistent here and say that if the pardon is as important as I say that it is for the proper functioning of our society, I'd be willing to extend that to a preemptive pardon. But that hasn't been constitutionally answered. Now, Gerald Ford preemptively pardoned Richard Nixon. I think that was a really specific edge case. You had one president pardoning another president and trying to move the nation forward. So, I mean, you could point to that if you want to, but there.
And importantly, in that case, that case is distinct from this one, because in that case, while he had not been indicted or convicted of any particular crime, there were active accusations. He did this crime, right? And keep in mind that with several of these pardons of Biden's family, barring Hunter, with Hunter Biden, there are a few particular crimes that he's accused of, and he also got the blanket pardon for everything he may or may not have done. With the rest of Joe's family, with a very few exceptions, the pardon is there are no suspicions, no indictments, no allegations. There's nothing. But let me just shine an extra spotlight on these fuckers by saying they need a pardon.
Yeah, because what happened with Nixon was his operatives broke into the Watergate motel to spy on people. And there's a whole bunch of crimes right there. And at a minimum, he appears to have been involved in covering up their activity. I think the historical record reflects that as fact. So you are correct. There are some pretty specific things that he could be pardoned for. But with Biden's family, it's like, well, hold on. Again, Bart Simpson meme. What an odd thing to say. So either the preemptive pardon is going to be a thing, which I might actually just be okay with in general, even though just like the regular pardon, it will get abused, or the preemptive pardon will not be a thing. And now you've basically said, hey, everyone is gay but me. Huh? Really? Everybody but you is gay? Sure thing, pal. That's
an
again.
That's an interesting thing to point out.
Yes, that is in fact an interesting thing to point out. What's going on with that? And if the preemptive pardon stands, buddy, okay, every single person that was preemptively pardoned, oh, you subpoena the fuck out of them. Just because you can't prosecute them doesn't mean you can't put sunshine on the situation, and you can't force.
You can investigate them, and you can throw the book at everybody connected to them in the course of the commission of the crime. And like Waller pointed out, they've lost their 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment. Well, the 4th is a little tricky on that. Just
the
because you're
one is
the prosecution doesn't mean I can just kick in your door and search your properties, person, property, and paper. But you've got that. But here's the other one. Like I pointed out earlier, because of the specific time period that Biden issued Hunter's pardon for, guys, it is this simple. There was a period of about 6 hours in which Hunter Biden was pardoned for anything that he did in the future for the next 6 hours. If the language of that pardon stands, Donald Trump could literally form a team of, he could hire a bunch of old spooks like me and say, your job is to go and kill every Democrat you can find. And oh, by the way, here's a pardon from now until the time of your natural death for any crime you commit connected to this mission. Have fun.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but you could say this is conspiracy theory, or you could say this is pattern recognition. But okay,
the same thing.
That
is 100% correct.
If Hunter Biden had about 6 hours where he could literally do almost anything he wanted with absolute immunity, what evidence did he destroy in that time frame? That would be the question I would ask. Be like, man, it's almost like you said, son, I'm going to look the other way. Sure would be a shame if that pile of documents got set on fire.
Yeah,
it'd be an awful shame if that happened.
Unspecified crimes might include spoliation.
Well, look, if you're willing to commit murder, it's also illegal to conceal a death. But you've already committed murder. Why not go ahead and try and cover up the crime? It's
well, that's why spoliation is treated the way it is. So we've explained this, we've discussed this many times before, but the specific crime is spoliation, and that is the destruction of evidence. When you are caught destroying evidence, right? The easy example is you're being charged with murder, and you're caught after you're caught destroying the murder weapon, right? And you have destroyed the murder weapon sufficiently that it's not a useful piece of evidence, but you were caught in the act of destroying the weapon. The judge's instructions to the jury will be to assume that the evidence you destroyed was completely and totally damning, because the logic is, the legal argument and logic is that the destroyer, the person destroying the evidence, the accused, believes that evidence is so damning that he would prefer to risk being charged with the illegal destruction of evidence instead of whatever he's likely to be convicted of by that evidence. That essentially you have to assume that the evidence he was destroying would in fact seal the conviction. Be Controversial says that should work for Hillary Clinton. In fact, Be Controversial, if I remember correctly, it was in the course of the Hillary Clinton documents case. We were talking about the emails and all that, and smashing things with hammer and bleach pit. And, oh, you mean wipe the server like with a rag?
With a cloth?
With a cloth, right? So, yes, that's exactly correct. And that was one of the first places that I really went down the rabbit hole discussing what spoliation is back then.
Yeah, if a 38 special that you own is suspected to be the murder weapon, why would you destroy it unless it was actually the murder weapon? Like, it's so. But yeah, like I do think, and I know that we have other things like Elon Musk's Nazi salute and Trump pardoning the J6ers that we also want to talk about. But
Trump pardoning the J6ers, what?
Yes, but just to really drive the point home, and you said something about giving spooks a blanket pass. I think at this point you could give spooks a blanket pass and say, hey, look, Biden already kind of lays the target. Go figure out why he painted this target. Like, you don't even have to move on it. Just tell me why he painted this target, and I'll decide what to do with that information when I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody with kids, anybody with kids knows this. Like, your kid walks by you super quiet with their hand behind their back. Like, nope. What you got? Show me what you got. Well, nothing. Yeah, show me what you got. Like, that's exactly what this is. This is just the federal level of your kid quietly walking past you with their hand behind their back.
Yeah. Hey, 4chan, you need some direction and some aiming for that weaponized autism. Go get them. Tell us everything. So the last thing I want to say on Biden's pardons, and she mentioned it, the first chick we listened to talk about this. The check on the power of the pardon is the impeachment. And this is important because Joe Biden is no longer the president, but it has been covered repeatedly as the Democrats have threatened to go back and impeach Donald Trump, right, before he was reelected, right? We're talking about just in the 2 or 3 years after he first left office. The Democrats floated over and over the idea of impeaching him after he was president. That is absolutely a legitimate thing. We could totally go back and impeach Obama for murdering people with drones, right? And we should. But if Biden were to be impeached, even now that he's out of office, he could be impeached by the Congress, and that impeachment could even go so far as for that impeachment to be based on the illegitimacy of these pardons. He could be impeached for having abused the process. Now, the impeachment power is, it says for for high crimes and misdemeanors, right? And the legislature decides what those things are. You don't have to have a specific. It doesn't have to be a crime that is already specifically outlawed. That's one of the many reasons that the process of impeachment is distinct from the process of indictment, right? As normal citizens, there are laws, and we should not break the law. And if we do break the law, then we go through the process of indictment, where it's said that, okay, we all know that this thing you did is wrong, and we know it, and so we wrote it down. Impeachment deals with people who have extraordinary power and deal with circumstances that do not arise for the common citizen. And so the impeachment process is distinct, because the expectation is sometimes you're going to have somebody with extraordinary power who does something so crazy that we all look at and say, okay, we didn't think of this before, but now that we see you do it, we totally know that shit's fucked up.
Well,
right? It never occurred to me that you would stick your dick in a jelly donut and then try to put that in a toaster. But now that I see it, I know it's not right.
Well, Biden circumvented this by literally issuing the pardons to his family in his final minutes in office. Like, everything about this looks suspicious AF. As the kids would say, it looks sus. And indeed, it does look very sus.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear on the timeline, but based on the reporting, it seems like he issued the pardons during the inauguration.
And I don't know that it was during the inauguration, but I read one person that said, like, literally he had like 22 minutes left in his presidency.
He had like a pocket Resolute desk. Trump's up there, puts his hand on the Bible, and Biden's like, and pardoned.
So anyhow, but pardons, boy, we beat that to death for 45 minutes, and I feel like we could actually keep going. However,
but we haven't even gotten to the J6, but there's a whole other rack of pardons to get to. Like Jake Chansley. He says, I just got the news from my lawyer. I got a pardon, baby. Thank you for President Trump. Now I'm going to go buy some motherfucking guns. My man.
Yep. So, okay. This was one of the big campaign promises from Trump, and there were a lot of people that, like, Maj Toure is a good example of this, and Maj Toure is a great follow on Twitter, but Maj is not a Republican. He's a libertarian, and kind of at the last second was brought into the fold and willing to vote for Trump.
Remember when we met Maj Toure?
Yeah, I remember when I had no idea he was Maj Toure. I just thought he was a dude wearing a cool shirt. Had this whole conversation with him, and it was that was fun. Anyhow,
I had his number, but he changed it.
But anyhow, but Maj says pardoning the January 6ers is one of the non-negotiables. If the January 6ers don't get pardoned, or at least commuted, some form of clemency. The power of the pardon is actually pretty broad. But if they don't get some form of clemency, he's out, and basically fuck Trump. I'll never vote Republican again. So the fact that he's already issued 1,500 instances of clemency is a good thing. There's still about 100 left. There were about 1,600 people that have been arrested or charged or whatever in relation to January 6th. And those last 100, he has said, basically these are special circumstances. They need to go, they need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I'll probably pardon them as well, but they merit further review. On the one hand, I actually think the right move would have been to just walk in and say, nope, all January 6 people pardon, period. Don't care, whatever.
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit yesterday. It's very difficult to look at. If you look at all the charges that were filed against J6ers, I challenge you to find one that would normally result in a sentence of more than 4 years. And many of those people have sat there without trial. They've all been charged at this point, but many of them sat there without trial for the entire 4 years to date.
Yes, we've talked about this before, that one thing that frequently happens in the legal system that seems to really disadvantage poor people is they'll get arrested for something. And, excuse me,
bless you,
get arrested for something, and they won't be able to make bond, so they sit in jail for 3 months, 6 months, a year, waiting on a trial. And then eventually district attorney comes along and says, hey, what if we plead you down to a lesser crime and just give you time served and let you out? And a lot of people actually say yes to that. And whether you can love it or you can hate it, but it is a thing that is so common in our legal system, the whole time served thing, and we'll just let you out and say the scales are balanced. If you felt like these people needed to sit in jail for years, especially in some of the conditions I've heard about. Try not to sneeze again. Especially
because a lot of them were kept in solitary confinement for more than a year,
which is torture. Please believe me when I tell you that being locked down is torture. That is cruel and unusual punishment. So if these people needed to pay penance, they have paid it. They have absolutely paid it. But I'm still going to call it a good thing. This is Donald Trump making good on his promises. He said he would pardon them. It's not unreasonable that he's already pardoned over 90% of them. And, that last 5 to 10%, he's like, I'm just going to look these over one more time. Like that's actually not an unreasonable thing to do. Though I would have preferred him just say, nope, fuck it, all of them, you're pardoned. But I'm still going to call it a win. That's Trump keeping a promise. Like, politicians keeping promises. What? Who? What bizarre land do we live in?
What?
So the other one that's really important, speaking of these pardons, Ross Ulbricht. Trump said that he was going to commute his sentence to time served and let him out of jail. And he said that he'd start the process of the commutation day one in office.
That's the Silk Road guy.
Silk Road guy. Yep. That's
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about that one to speak intelligently to it.
I don't know that I know enough about it to speak intelligently to it, but I'll pretend like I do.
But Waller says pardon Ross, and Waller's a sharp dude.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that everything about what happened with Ross Ulbricht was kind of weird edge case territory. And to be fair, there were times where Ross Ulbricht was kind of antagonistic toward the federal government. Like, ha, motherfuckers, I found a loophole. And yeah, like the libertarian meme magic was real. But he did kind of go poking the hornet's nest. And look, I'm not saying he belongs in prison. I don't actually think he belongs in prison. There were people that used Silk Road for absolutely terrible things. And if you want to argue that people have a responsibility to keep certain things off their platforms, that's a fair discussion to have. But, the thing that got Ross Ulbricht in trouble is he found a way to work entirely outside the system, and then he bragged about how he found a way to work entirely outside the system. And I am fully convinced that...
You know what? If he was throwing middle fingers to the system, I'm pretty much on his side.
Look, and I'm fully convinced that the reason why the law came after him is not because of any specific things that happened on Silk Road. It's because he built Silk Road and then threw up middle fingers. Hey, look, I have built Silk Road, and that's actually such an American thing to do. Like I'm all for pardoning him. Oh, Ulbricht is a jerk and he's an asshole and all these things. Yeah, maybe he is. Maybe he is a piece of absolute shit, but I still say pardon him. Like if the biggest piece of shit in your society doesn't have rights, none of you have rights.
Correct.
Period. Full stop.
Epstein should have made it to trial.
That's right. Epstein had the right to go to trial and spend his millions to defend himself. He had that right, and the fact that it was taken away from him is bad.
But nobody's surprised either because it was taken away from him by Democrats, and that's just kind of what they do.
No, Chris, he hung himself with a bed sheet, dude. Didn't you? In this magical moment where all the guards fell asleep and all the cameras crapped out, he just decided to kill himself right then and there. Like, that was...
Yeah. Unverified Bear says 80% of U.S. jail inmates have never had a trial. I would have to look into that number, and that's something we'd have to do some research on. But let me say this. I suspect that if that number is true, it's 80% of U.S. jail, not prison inmates. And so what you're talking about is most of those people are awaiting the trial and have been, they have failed to bond out, which I'm not necessarily defending, but I want to be careful that we don't conflate people awaiting trial with people who have never received trial, which is kind of almost the opposite of what we're talking about with J6 guys, because they were all said to be awaiting trial, but many of them were awaiting trial for 3 years or more. There are some who are still awaiting trial.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Unverified Bear's numbers are correct, even if you
would... points out they pled guilty, therefore no trial. Good point.
Yeah, look, that's exactly where I was going. I wouldn't be surprised if even including the people that are sitting in prison, it's a thing that happens. Like, go sit in a courtroom, you will see people Skype in from a room in the jail where they've been, and the judge will ask them, so do you understand what you're pleading to? And they'll say something to the effect of, yes, I realize this is a 4-year sentence and I'd like to just get on with the next portion of my life. They've already been sitting in jail for a year. They could sit in prison for 3 more years, or they could keep sitting in jail, eventually go to trial, and maybe get a 10 or a 20-year sentence. Now all of a sudden, yeah. So,
well, and to your point about that as well, I've seen cases where you've got the inmate Skyping in from the jail, not actually being walked into the courtroom, which, y'all, his ass needs to be in the room.
Yeah, I've also got some I've got some
for so many reasons, but for so many other reasons, but this one in particular too. I've seen cases where the accused is supposed to Skype in for his bond hearing, and the jail fails the tech check. They don't get the call on, and the judge says, "Oh, well, we'll just proceed without him then."
Yeah, I could tell some stories. I wish I couldn't tell some stories, but I could tell you some stories about your bond hearing. And you're supposed to Skype into it, and that fails. I'm not trying to tell on myself too much, but I promise you that's a thing that can happen. And that you
I won't say anything more than this. If you find yourself in the bad spot, you fucking make sure you have friends in the room.
Yes, that is fantastic advice. So And then there's just a, a couple of other things that Waller has said. I want to respond to. He talked about the feds using Silk Road. I deliberately didn't mention that at all because Chris has signed NDAs, and I get the feeling that's the kind of thing he would not be allowed to speculate about how likely it is that the feds would use Silk Road to avoid accountability.
I can speculate all day. I cannot tell you anything in particular. I will say this much about that. I never heard about Silk Road before I was out of the Army.
Okay. We'll just leave that right there.
Good to go. I'm good to go.
Fair enough. We could leave that right there. But that was a piece of it. But he refused to surrender control. See, he was truly outside the system, and God, the feds hate that. And Waller says, if you're ever charged for the crime, take that shit to trial. Juries don't like convicting people, sir. And I've talked to you before and have some respect for you, but you are deeply incorrect. You better be damn sure you ever take something to trial that's your best option, because juries, if it was guys like Chris and I on the jury, yeah, sure, take it to trial. But guys like Chris and I don't tend to end up on juries. We tend to get kicked out because when they ask us all those questions in the beginning, we tell the truth.
The first time I was asked by a judge to leave when I was there for jury duty. He asked me if I thought that the law was too onerous with relation to the use of illicit drugs. And I said, yes, Your Honor, I'm a Darwinist, and I believe that if a man wants to snort a line of cocaine and die as a result, that he ought to have the right to stop using and wasting my oxygen. And the judge said, oh, thank you for your time, Mr. Lauer. You have a nice day. And that was a great day because I didn't want to do jury duty because it was going to cost me a fortune to be there, not earning the money that I was earning at the time. And it happened to be the truth.
Yeah. So no, there's and Pitt Danny even points out, definitely not a DC jury. A DC jury?
Yeah, no shit.
Buddy. Yeah, no.
Don't be white in DC.
Yeah. Don't do that. So yeah. But still, just to put a button on it, still going to call it a win. It's a good thing. Trump said he would do it. He's pardoned over 90% of them. It was literally one of the very first things he did when he took office. I do need some clarification on the Ross Ulbricht question. The fact that he might actually be a total arrogant piece of shit doesn't matter. That's contempt of cop is not a crime. Contempt of the law can be a crime, but contempt of cop is not a crime. So
no, but it is one of those things where you will do the ride. You will not beat the.
I'm not saying do it.
You might be, yeah.
I'm not saying do it. The people that flip birds to police officers, y'all, that's stupid. Is it legal for you to do? Yeah. Is it dumb as shit for you to do? Also, yes.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't matter. I need clarification on the Ross Ulbricht issue. He got convicted of operating outside the system. That's what happened. And I'm going to come down on the side of the person who operated outside of the system 100% of the time. So that the federal government, it's Tony Stark. It's Tony Stark at the end of Iron Man. No, the suit is mine and you can't have it. That is actually the correct attitude.
Oh, it's the beginning of the second one, but yes.
Oh, that's right. It was the beginning of
I privatized world peace.
That's right. I'm sorry, man. Marvel has so disappointed me. The lore has gotten hazy in my brain.
You know what though? Deadpool versus Wolverine. They did there's a lot to complain about with Deadpool versus Wolverine. It was a little choppy and floppy, but they spent a lot of time just saying, okay, Marvel, the fans are tired of your stupid shit. And the whole movie is basically a critical examination and repudiation of the entire concept of multiverse, of using the multiverse as a cheap plot mechanism.
Yeah, get out of jail free card.
We're going to stop doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, hey, look, what if we just had Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman play the characters they're the most known for, and they take turns beating each other up and beating up bad guys, and then beating each other up, and beating up bad guys. You know what? Okay, I'm in. You got me. You got sometimes.
It was great. That is the only movie I've seen in a theater in probably 2 years.
And was it the greatest movie of all time? No. Was it even the greatest Deadpool movie of all time? No. But did it get exactly what I paid for?
It was Snakes on a Plane.
That is exactly what it was. It was Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay, sure. Yep. Deadpool and Wolverine. Gotcha.
I picked up the little box that said chocolate, and I opened it, and it wasn't a shit.
That's right. That box actually had.
It actually contained chocolate. So
it actually contained chocolate.
Let's wrap on this.
Is this the Elon Musk being a Nazi?
No. Oh, come on. Don't do this to me. Okay. Everybody hold on to your boo-boo. I'm going to hit the button.
Oh, dear. Okay, I'm here. And he's coming back. Well, while he's doing all that, I'm just going to respond to some of these comments.
Oh, thank God you can still see them, because I had to reboot. Now I can't see the comments.
Okay, so Unverified Bear explains Silk Road is imagine eBay, but with no restriction on products. That is correct. There were a lot of criminals that used eBay to not eBay, but Silk Road to sell drugs. Let's be clear. This was a very seedy online marketplace, but you can't. People use the federal highway system to transport large quantities of illegal drugs all the time. That doesn't mean the problem is the federal highway system. It's the people that use the federal highway system to transport large quantities of drugs that are the problem. And Silk Road was a federal highway system. Oh, wait, oops, no, it turns out it actually wasn't a federal anything, and that's why the feds fucking hated it.
But yeah, you don't get to blame the gun.
Yeah, there you go. That's a fantastic example. Unverified Bear says, make police officers peace officers again. We're way too late in the show to go down that rabbit hole, but Chris and I both have got some pretty strong thoughts and feelings on what you just said there, sir. I
raised my hand and swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, and then went to foreign countries to find, engage with, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America and her sacred Constitution. A police officer holds his hand up, swears the same oath, and then hangs out and writes parking tickets to people who did nothing else wrong.
Bear says it wasn't passing judgment. I was just explaining what it was. I know that, Bear.
Sexy bitch.
Yeah, I know that, Bear. I was just giving context. Like, making it very clear that I understand that there were a lot of things about Silk Road that were offensive, and nope, Ross Ulbricht still needs that pardon. So if we're not ending on
that's rock solid. I prefer to describe it as Etsy for gray black market goods and services.
Okay, so if we're not,
I made this in my workshop at home. What is it? It's a water bong. It's a gravity pipe.
If we're not ending on Elon being a Nazi, then what are we ending on?
Because I think the Elon's a Nazi conversation might just need more air than we have time for. And this was a moment that just really. There's a piece of criticism that's being lobbed that I want to address.
Oh, see, now I'm excited.
This moment You talk about a powerful statement about what America is.
To be sung by Carrie Underwood. It appears they're having some audio problems in the rotunda, which we are discerning both from the fact that
Oh, come on.
we are waiting.
Damn. Okay. Okay, now I gotta lift and shift fire because here's what I wanted to talk about. This Brooklyn dad defiant. You guys have seen him on X. He's a shithead. But he says technical difficulties delaying the performance of America the Beautiful is an apt metaphor for the next 4 years.
Oh boy. Well, that tweet's not going to age well.
No, it's not. And I replied with this wall of text. You mean how some petty Democrat staffer will attempt to sabotage the will of the people at every possible opportunity, and then a dedicated patriot will adapt and overcome the vile sabotages of the ongoing coup by the sociopaths of the deep state? Yeah, you may have a point there. Because, right, and I'm not, sure there's a reasonable conspiracy theory to develop there, I'm sure, but the fact of the matter is that what happened is somebody failed. Somebody failed to get the sound set up. Okay. Live is hard mode. Shit happens. It does, right? It could have just been a legitimate mistake.
Yeah, and then she sang a cappella and killed it anyway. Like, okay, this metaphor for the next 4 years. Like, oh, we're about to listen.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
And I mean,
what a moment!
What? I'll give it to Brooklyn Dad on that. Yes, that is a fantastic example of a
the next 4 years
recognizing a problem and adapting and overcoming. And that is going to be the next 4 years. Donald Trump is going to be fighting an uphill battle against an entrenched deep state, entrenched staffers, and sociopath Democrats at every level of government doing everything they can do to obstruct and throw roadblocks in the way. And he's going to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, like that was... and you know what's really crazy is her just rolling with it and getting the crowd to sing along with her.
Yeah, the only thing that would have been better is if she was in like a skimpy Marine Corps uniform when it happened to really drive home that adapt and overcome.
Right. Like it just, and just the symbolism of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris behind her being forced to sing along with her. Like everything about that made it better, not worse. So yeah, sure, Brooklyn Dad, if that's going to be the next 4 years, buddy, I'm down with it.
Yep.
Because that was a real moment that only happens when somebody truly adapts and overcomes.
Plus, nothing diverse at all.
Nothing what? I didn't catch that.
There's nothing diverse about Carrie Underwood. Because that whole adapt and overcome and solve problems thing, that is not something that traditionally results from diversity. I submit the California wildfires as an example. We have a problem and we cannot figure out how to solve it. Diversity.
Yeah, not competency.
No.
All right. So Brother, anything else? We're knocking on hour 15.
Yeah, buddy.
Went long as fuck.
I think I'm good to wrap there. I think we had a great show this morning. Thanks for joining us, you guys. I really appreciate y'all tuning in. And anything else to close on there, Cameron?
No, just sad we couldn't get to the Elon Musk doing the Nazi salute. And look, spoiler alert, it's never a Nazi salute.
If you want to talk about it. But I'm running out of coffee.
I'm out of coffee. So
Roger that. Okay. In that case, thanks for watching today, guys. Hit the link below, buy us a coffee. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things. Share the shit out of the show. And come back tomorrow. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.
That's a good show.